On February 3rd, Jersey City Mayor Steven Fulop held the Ward A community meeting. Fulop started the meeting by handing out public safety data sheets which showed Jersey City's crime stats of the years 2013 to 2015. In comparison to the Jersey City crime statistics, the data sheets showed the crime stats of Jersey City's South District, in which much of the meeting's focus was on. During the topic of police and community interaction to prevent crime in their area, Fulop stressed the need for community and witness involvement.
Touch on kind of some of the shootings that you touched on, that you mentioned as well, and some of those kind of troubled corners, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of the challenges that we have with that. So, we will see, or we will know that in a shooting situation, often there are witnesses. Like, we will either see it on some of these broken cameras, or we will have people in the area initially respond and say that there are witnesses. But when push comes to shove, very few of those witnesses want to move forward and be a part of the process to convict people. That places tremendous strain on what we are trying to do. Because in today's country, in today's world, ultimately, and this is the way the system is set up, it's set up properly, that if you only have a police officer testifying against an individual, the chances of a jury conviction are very small. That's the way the process was set up properly, ultimately. So that places us in a predicament from the prosecutor's standpoint, from the judge's standpoint, recognizing the fact that it is hard to get a conviction, and that's where some of those pleas start to happen, and people get out on the street faster, ultimately. So we need cooperation and a partnership, ultimately, with the community, because that is the only way that you will get some of those people off the street in a permanent way.
This statement from Fulop brought community member Jermaine Woodward to testify against the mayor's simple proposal of community involvement, bringing up the case of his 8-year-old son's death, in which a hit-and-run occurred outside of 50 Bostwick Avenue during the summer of this year. With no arrests made, but with witness involvement, Mr. Woodward felt community involvement is present, but an involvement from the city needs to be felt.
You talked about it was an accident, but how it came out as the two guys that talked about the whole situation, they came out on Facebook. Your police officers have the Facebook messages as both of the brothers talk about running down my son. That was in the summertime, and no arrest has been made, or nothing. And you want to be the governor. How can you be the governor if you can't protect none of our kids?
In response to Mr. Woodward's comment, Fulop stated, anytime there is a homicide or a potential homicide in the city, it is the same process that the city follows. The Hudson County's prosecutor's office takes over the investigation entirely. It leaves our hands, and that is a process to protect residents ultimately.
The process is that he needs to engage in the Hudson County prosecutors. The way it works, that anytime there is a homicide or a potential homicide in the city, okay, it's the same process that the city follows. The Hudson County's prosecutor's office takes over the investigation entirely. It leaves our hands, and that is a process to protect residents ultimately.
Resident Pamela Johnson voiced her opinion in community relations with the current administration, in particular to the issue of Jermaine Woodward, stating, "There was no type of initiative to say we can advocate for you, and that's the problem."
It makes him feel like he's not empowered, like he's not a part of the community, and that's the problem. His 8-year-old son is no longer here, and he has to speak for him, but who's speaking for Jermaine? And I think that as our current administration, for him to ask a question, or for the young lady to say, well, who can be his advocate, and there was no type of, initiative to say, well, we can advocate for you, that's the problem.
Ms. Johnson later went on to address the issues of empowerment within the community.
We don't feel empowered in the community. There are no jobs. Recreation is not in the school systems. Schools are not open as late as they should be, so children could come off the street and come into a safe haven. Every child out there is not out there because they want to be. I sit in a lot of these meetings and I hear a lot of community bashing and victim bashing of how we should step forward and be accountable. Everyone is accountable, not just the community. So if I report that I see a murder, yes, I'm helping you solve that murder, right? But what is preventing the next murder?
This is Michael Rodriguez for Hudson County View, the eye of the community.